All right, so today we're going to be dividing fractions. And there's been a couple of like tricks and like different methods of dividing fractions, and cross multiplying is one that always comes up. I really don't want us to do cross multiplying because we forget kind of which number to put where. Okay, and so any sort of trick like that if we can't consistently remember how to do it, like I could show you how to do it and you guys would be fine for today, but then 3 weeks from now when we're needing to divide fractions like in a different problem and you guys can't remember, oh, does this number go on the top or does this number go on the top? I'm not interested in those kind of methods, okay? So what I'm gonna show you to do is really pretty simple. It honestly is. If you guys can multiply fractions, dividing fractions is really, really easy. But I do want you to do it this way, okay? So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to give you 7/4 divided by, we'll say, 5/2. Okay. So do you guys ever, do you remember, or have you ever heard of like the saying like keep, change for like with adding and subtracting negatives? Okay, it's kind of like that. To divide fractions, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to actually have you rewrite, and you're changing it to a multiplication problem. Instead of dividing by 5/2, I'm going to multiply by 2/5. Okay? So you're multiplying by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal is just a fancy word that means like flipped, okay, for a fraction. They're flipped. And then, do you guys remember how to multiply fractions?
Just straight across.
Yep, you multiply straight across. 7 times 2 is 14. 4 times 5 is 20. And then really make sure that we reduce. Most of the mistakes that I've seen on the adding and subtracting worksheet and then the multiplying worksheet was from not reducing. So those are both divisible by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So your final answer should be reduced. Improper fractions are totally fine. I'm okay with that. So if the numerator is bigger than the denominator, you don't have to change it to a mixed number. In fact, I would prefer you didn't. Okay? So improper fractions are fine. The reason this works is kind of what I actually kind of talked about it earlier. If you think about it with whole numbers, and you don't have to write this down, but if I said 10 divided by 2, does it make sense that that's the same as 10 times 1/2? Okay, so every time multiplication and division, you can just change it to the reciprocal. All right, let's do another one. Let's say 3/4 divided by 5/12. Okay? So again, and on your worksheet, I do want you to actually show this part. Even if you can skip it for now, just for today, show it later on. If you want to skip it, that's fine. But actually rewrite it as multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay? And then you can just multiply straight across. 3 times 12 is 36. 4 times 5 is 20. And then we have to make sure we reduce it. Those are both divisible by 4. So if I divide 36 by 4, it's 9. Divide 20 by 4 is 5. Okay. Now, If you guys can cross cancel to start with, I'm fine if you do that. So like to start with, I can see 12 and 4 are both divisible by 4. So you can divide a 4 out, divide a 4 out. And then you're just basically reducing ahead of time. It keeps smaller numbers. You guys remember me doing that? Okay. So I'm fine if you do that. It's just you don't have to. So if that confuses you, just multiply straight across and then reduce at the end. All right. We're going to have just a couple more examples. We'll keep it pretty short today. So I'm going to do a whole number divided by a fraction. Okay. So anytime I'm working with fractions and I've got a whole number, how do we deal with that? Yeah, just put it over 1. 4 over 1 is the same as 4. And then it's 4 over 1 times 2 over 1, which is just 8 over 1. Yeah, and then don't leave, this was another mistake that I saw quite a bit, don't leave something over 1, because that's like 8 divided by 1. It's just 8. Okay? Now, real quick, just because I think sometimes dividing fractions doesn't make a lot of sense to us, but if I look at this, if I give you guys something like 10 divided by 2, the way that you guys typically think about that is how many times does 2 go into 10, right? Well, it goes in 5 whole times. Fractions actually work the same way, just sometimes it's a little bit harder for us to see because the numbers get messier. But 4 divided by half, it's like how many times does a half of something go into 4 wholes? Well, it actually goes in 8 whole times. Okay, I'd have a half and another half would be a whole, and then you'd have that 8 times. It would work the same way. For example, if I had 3/4 divided by let's just say 3 wholes. So again, I've got a whole number, put it over 1. That's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, 1/3. Okay? And that should make sense. Dividing by 3 is the same as multiplying by 1/3. Okay? And then we can multiply straight across. And then does that reduce?
Yeah. The 1/4.
Yep, they're both divisible by 3. And again, you could have cross-reduced to there and got the same thing. But yeah, when we're dividing, where was I going with that? Yeah, dividing by a whole number is the same as multiplying by a fraction. So it goes back to kind of what I was saying. If I go back to that example of 10, and you don't have to write this down, but if I said 10 divided by 2, it's the same thing as multiplying by a fraction, half of 10, okay? Same thing with dividing by 3, it's the same as multiplying by a third, okay? So multiplication and division are inverses of each other, and that's why we can just flip the fraction, okay? Does anybody have any questions? All right, then that is it. I'll let you guys, you'll have the rest of the class to work on the worksheet.